Nothing will crush a real estate investor's spirit like landlord stress. The difference between being successful and miserable in managing properties is education. Welcome to Landlord University, where landlords learn. Landlord University is recorded from inside the RentPrep office, where Stephen White and Jeff Pearson share the lessons learned from working with some of the most successful landlords.
Welcome to Landlord University Night School. I'm Jeff Pearson. I'm here with my co-host, Stephen White. How are you doing this evening, Stephen?
Pretty good, Jeff. I picked a topic out, and I think the inspiration came from, I don't know about in your area, but in my area, you drive, and I don't want to get, on any one side of a political debate on the podcast, but I'm driving down the road on my way to the RentPrep office, and you see a bunch of those yard signs that say "Repeal the SAFE Act." Do you guys have that in your area?
No. What's the
No?
SAFE Act?
SAFE Act is the ban on certain types of weapons, so gun control act, and also regulates the size of clips that you can use, or magazine clips, so how many rounds a weapon can hold. And people who are pro guns and supporters of their amendment rights don't like this type of government control. And there's other people on the side of the argument that say, well, I want to feel safe in my community, and there's no reason for somebody to have a 50-round, magazine that they can go into a public place and get off a heck of a lot more chances to do damage. So, I can understand both sides of the argument, but the signs and the topic just sort of raised the question of, what if a landlord wants to ban weapons in their buildings? What rights, what ability do they have? And so I thought that'd be a great topic to bring to the show.
Yeah, very much so. Well, in California, we do have some of those types of laws. I think we had some of the first laws about regulating clip size and different types of so-called assault rifles and things like that. So we certainly have some of that type of stuff sitting out there. But tell us what you came up with in your research.
Well, I think that it should come as no surprise. I mean, really, it's up to the landlord and the property manager in the case of what you want to set your policies as. And you have the right, as your property, you can determine if you want to allow weapons to be there or if you don't. So you can, in fact, ban weapons in your building and say, we don't allow weapons in this rental unit or in this apartment community or whatever the case is. Of course, I don't think that a lot of landlords bring it up or even address it unless they are including it in their policy or in their lease or anything. It's not something that I hear that comes up very often. So it's one of those things where I think that for the most part, it's sort of a don't ask, don't tell issue where, landlords just assume that if you do have weapons, you're taking care of them correctly, or you're legal, you're allowed to have whatever weapon it is that you have a proper permit, or you've gone through the right steps or whatever. So I would think at the very least, if you're looking to address the issue as a landlord, if you're looking to ban the weapons, then you need to make that clear in your policy or in your lease agreement. And at the very least, I would think you want to make sure that if you're allowing them in your buildings, that you're at least letting people know that they need to be safe with them. And that might seem really obvious, but like we know and we talk about all the time, it never hurts to cover your own back. So if you have any kind of literature specific from your state, I know that I just researching this topic here, I came across all kinds of articles and checklists of things of how to properly secure your weapons, and talking about trigger locks and gun safes, and if there's a child in the house, the different steps to take. So I think as a landlord, it's definitely a good move, just the same as you would give somebody a fire safety sheet or pamphlet or something, to have something in line with dealing with weapons as well.
Yes, exactly. I know in California, and I think it's a state law, but we do have trigger lock laws that require that all guns either be in a qualified safe or have a trigger lock on it. And it would make sense to provide a copy of that. And I don't know how far I'd go into giving somebody gun safety literature beyond safe and proper storage. And trigger locks and safes are a good way to let people know, hey, take care of these things, protect yourself, protect our community, and that would be a good way to do it. Just to cover that, like you said, it's similar to fire safety.
Right. You're just covering your tracks, and if there ever is an issue, God forbid, and anything ever does come back, you've done what you've gone above and beyond what you should or could do,
Exactly.
and you've tried your best to keep everyone safe and operate as a responsible business. And so I think that anytime that you can point your tenants in the right direction, give them an education, or just give them some information, um, it's going to benefit you in the long run for sure. So
Yes. Now, the tough part is if somebody decides they want to not allow guns or firearms in their property. It seems pretty simple and straightforward. You put it in the lease, no weapons allowed. But are you opening yourself up to more trouble than it's worth by including something like that in there? I guess, the only way you're going to really know if somebody has a firearm in the property is if they fire it or they get arrested for it or something like that. So, people can say, "Oh yeah, sure, not a problem. I'm not going to have a firearm." But if they have one, they're just going to keep it locked away, and you'll never know about it.
well, it's funny, in researching this, I came across a forum, and the forum was written from the tenant's perspective, or the question on the forum was written from the tenant's perspective about this topic. And one of the suggestions from someone else was, if your landlord has a no weapons policy and you want to take your weapon out to go to the range or whatever you're doing, he just puts his in a guitar case and leaves the house. So,
Right.
so there's always going to be ways around it, and ways that people find, to cheat the system, or get by. But people are aware of it, and there are definitely landlords who, who have that policy. I think you're right. I think that some people are going to definitely have problems with it, no doubt about it. So I would see landlords who are very, very on one side of this debate. That those are the ones that would say no, no weapons. That's
Yes.
my rules, and I'm willing to deal with the consequences, or the resistance that I might get from having that policy. So
Hmm.
I'm sure they're prepared to argue their point.
I can imagine. Yeah, and my feeling has always been, whenever and wherever possible, I try not to make rules that I expect people will break without even thinking twice about.
Hmm. Right.
And this is one of those types of rules. I mean, people who own weapons they're not going to think twice. Like,
Hmm.
I like this property. The rent is the right amount, and it's in the neighborhood I want to be in. That landlord will never know, so they just break the rule.
Yep.
And what are you really accomplishing by implementing that type of a rule? And I understand some people have very strong opinions about firearms. And in my opinion, we work with government and try to get government to pass the appropriate laws depending on your particular feelings about what is appropriate. But at the same time, does it make sense for us as landlords to try to regulate firearms by saying people can't have them? And again, my opinion is only because of the fact that I know that there's a pretty significant number, a portion of the population who would just ignore that. And
Oh yeah.
why put it in?
Yeah, it's easier to hide that than a pet. I mean,
Yeah,
we know that
exactly.
we know that people do that with, pets all the time, and say, well, I'll keep it a secret. They'll never know. They'll never find out. Well, in this case, they really probably won't. I mean, unless there's an issue.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I agree with you. I think that's a rule made to be broken for sure.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. So use your discretion, if you're a landlord. If you have a very strong stance on it, be prepared. Um, Not only with putting the language in your lease, but be prepared to argue your side of it if you do come across it, and also the impact that it may have, or on your response or your rental rate.
Yes, exactly. Well, great, Stephen. I think that wraps up another evening of night school. I look forward to talking with you tomorrow evening.
All right, thanks, Jeff.
Thanks for listening to Landlord University, and remember to visit rentprep.com/landlordu to see show notes and access free resources like forms and guides. And be sure to check out Jeff Pearson hosting his own hit podcast at thementorimpact.com.